So I started coming out of the coma in the hospital, and they said, well, you're going to have to sign some papers. So I already had a will, but they wanted me to sign one there, so I filled out like a living will, living trust there. And I had to sign with my left arm because my right arm I couldn't move it. I lost complete function of my right arm. And they said, we can't guarantee, no guarantees, we're going to try to save your life, but you got so many, I had so much wrong with me from that 7 days without food or water on the floor that my heart enzymes, my heart rhythms were off, my heart enzymes were gone, my brain was majorly hemorrhaged, so I didn't even know basically who I was. I didn't recognize my wife or my friends or my family. And my brain was basically gone. My heart enzymes were off. I had pneumonia. My liver was shut down and my kidneys were shut down, and they didn't know if they could get them going again. Then, like at 1 in the morning, I wake up and I want to leave the hospital. I'm fine. So I yank the IVs out of my arm, and I'm like limping out towards the door, and I get part of the way out of the door, and the nurse says, get back in bed. And like, you're probably not going to live anyway, so just get back in bed. And I said, well, my best friend's a prosecutor. He's the biggest prosecutor in the state. Call him up. I want out of here now. So next thing I know, a couple cops come into the hospital, and they basically forced me back in bed, and then they put a bunch of alarms on me and all that stuff. So if I moved, or they strapped me in there so I wasn't going to leave. And if I lifted my head that much, alarms would go off and they'd come in the room. I was in there for a month and a half. Then I got out of there, and I was wandering around the streets of Seattle, and I couldn't remember where I lived. I could barely remember my name. I didn't know what bus to take home where, and I'm just wandering around aimlessly. And I knew I was tired. I was cold. It was in winter. So I went in this coffee place. One night I snuck in an apartment. This person came in and they opened the door, and I just went in the apartment, and I went in the basement, and I just slept in the laundry room. And then I got up and left. And then I went back out of the apartment, and I went in this coffee shop, 6, 7 a.m. And I was just in the coffee shop. I think I got half a cup of coffee or something, and I was just leaning on the table or whatever, and she said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave. So I went from making $150,000 a year to that, from that injury. And I can't blame anybody for that. I brought it on myself. So I got a cab in downtown Seattle, and I lied. I remembered that I lived out in Lake City, and my ex lived out in Lake City, so I lied to the cab, and then that I had the money, because I didn't, and I didn't even have my ID, and he was driving me around the streets, and then finally I recognized the house and everything. And then he just threw me out of the cab. He didn't even ask me for money or anything. I don't know why. He just threw me out of the cab, and I was in a ditch. And then I was beating on my garbage can, and the neighbors called beating on the garbage can with a stick. I don't know why. And they called my ex-wife. And then she got me, and she put me in the back house. And I was in the back house on the floor, and I was incontinent. I couldn't control when I went to the bathroom or not. I basically needed diapers and stuff. And I was like that for 3 or 4 days. And she'd put food in front of me in the morning, and she'd go to work, and then she'd come home, and she saw that I didn't eat any of the food, and she just realized that I was dying, which I was. And then she tried getting me into different hospitals. And like, if you don't have the right medical insurance, see, what happened was I started a new job, so I didn't have medical insurance. It hadn't gotten started again. I mean, I'd worked other jobs. I worked heavy duty. I worked probably probably the first most dangerous type of job in the United States that you can do for 20 years. But that was in between jobs, and I just started, so I didn't have medical. And she couldn't get me into a hospital, and finally she did. She got me into a hospital. I remember being in the emergency room, and she was just arguing with the doctors, "You're going to take him, you're going to take him." He was a normal person at one time. He was a normal functioning human being. He knew who he was. He had a job. He was responsible. He made good money. He paid child support, blah, blah, blah. He visited his son, all that stuff. And they finally took me in, and then I had to sign another release that they didn't know if I was going to live or not. So I was in there for 2 months. And in there, I still had the tail end of pneumonia. My kidneys were working again in my liver, but I still had the really bad brain damage, which I still have. So they'd come and change me, and they'd check on me and take my vitals and all this and that, and they were pissed off because they'd tell me to piss in the thing that you're supposed to pee in, and I wouldn't always do it. Sometimes I piss on the bed and crap all over and everything because I wasn't in control of my body functions and all that. And in there, I was still hallucinating, and I was going in and out of coma. I thought I was in a hospital up in Everett, and I was in downtown Seattle. I didn't know where I was, and I still didn't recognize my wife, but I did recognize my best friend that I knew for, I don't know, 25 years at that point. And I had a staph infection going on. And then eventually I pulled out of it, and I could limp, but I still had complete loss in my right arm. And I'd look out the window and I'd see the port over there, see those big ships and all that. When I was doing some physical therapy, they couldn't get my right arm going, but they got me walking again. And I'd look out the window in the physical therapy there, and I'd go see those ships over there and those containers and all that, and those trucks. I used to drive those trucks. I used to drive those cranes. I used to do that. I used to make good money. I had a good job, and I liked it. So I finally got out of there, and my wife took me back to Japan. And so I went back to Japan, and it took me about a year to finally get to where I could move my right arm again. I had to work really hard. I had to do physical therapy every day. I worked my ass off. I mean, it was just a chore every day just to stay alive, and I couldn't cook or function really all that much and all that well. And I was a full-time, I used to be an actor there, and I was a full-time actor. I worked like 22, 23 days a month in Japan. In Tokyo as a main television actor in Japan. So I got a little bit better, and I started doing little small jobs and, working just a little bit a few times a week, doing acting jobs in Japan and all that. And I got better. But I don't know, after the brain injury, it's been like 8 years since I've had the brain injury, and I've read all these books and studied all this stuff, and like your synapses are supposed to reconnect, and if you don't use it or lose it, like your muscles, if you're not using your memory and exercising your mind, you'll lose it and you'll go senile or whatever, and all that stuff. And I used to be a really smart person. Like, I could remember 50 people's names. I had an excellent visual memory, so I would recognize people before they recognized me for years. Like, if I hadn't seen somebody for 9 years, I could recognize them before they recognized me. And then I could remember their addresses and their phone numbers, 50 people just right off the top of my head. And I can't do that anymore after the brain injury. And I don't know if I will be able to. And then I used to trade stock. I used to trade big chunks of stock. I used to trade like $40,000 trades a few times a day, so I was like making good money. But my brain was working good, so I could do all that stuff. And I could remember a ton of lines and do acting and know my blocking and all that stuff and get things done in 1 or 2 takes. Boom. Next scene. Light up the room. Look at your lines. I'd get the script on the set, and I remember the lines in, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then boom, we were shooting, and we'd get 1 or 2 takes, and I was off to the next scene or location.